Hi, this is Jay, and I'm with B. And today we're going to talk about her new book, The Secret Book of Soap Magic. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah,
All right. Can I ask you a question to start out with?
sure.
Why do you think people should make their own homemade soap?
I don't. I think they should go to Walmart and buy that. It's probably best.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Um, well, if you want to have uber responsibility over your life, then you would make your own soap because that's a really intimate thing to put what you put on your body. And there's no verifiable reason to trust ingredients you can't spell, say, understand, to put in or on your system. And that a little bit leaning into a different bent is the corporations mostly have proven that you can't trust them.
Yeah.
So you either learn to trust yourself and your choices, or you continue to trust the corporations, or don't bathe. Those seem to be the choices.
Plus, you don't even know what you're putting on your skin with these so-called soaps that you buy from the store.
They're not really soap, they're cleansers, they're detergents. So they're strippers, oil strippers. And soap operates a little bit differently. It's less harsh and it affects the oils on your skin and attaches to them, and then moving water and friction from your hand or your washcloth or whatever moves that oil slash dirt, the dirt that's housed in the oil on the sebum on your skin, and then it washes off. It doesn't break, soap doesn't break oil down.
Right.
Detergents break oil down like a cleanser or a stripper or that's what the word detergent is, and it chemically affects the oil versus doing exactly what I just described about soap. So it's two different animals, actually.
Detergents are for cleaning like a car part or pots and pans and stuff like that, not for the human body. Is that what you would agree with?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Anybody that's done dishes without gloves on and used detergents knows how it strips your body, and my fingers crack when I do that, so
Yeah.
that can't be good.
So essentially, detergents are like solvents where it chemically changes the properties of the dirt or the oil. Would you agree with that?
That sounds more accurate, yeah.
Yeah. So when I read your book, one of the best parts of the book to me was the history part of the soap. So I really enjoyed that because when I wrote a couple blog posts about oils that we use to make soaps, I found out a lot of different things about it, about what it takes to make the oil and to get it here and the corruption involved. So can you explain what you discovered when researching the history of soap in a nutshell?
Well, that the story we're told about soap is not accurate or even close to accurate, and that there's a mindset about it going in while reading a lot of this material, which is that human beings are dirty and can't wash unless they're told to wash.
Can you explain?
Well, I made kind of light of it in the first book about how the church brought down these edicts and said that people are too vain and shouldn't wash so often. And at the time, that was what we consider social media. The only place you got news, especially for people who couldn't read, you go to church and you listen to your betters. And they would explain and try to get people not to wash as often because they saw it as a sign of vanity. These are all cursory ideas to answer the question. They couldn't control certain people because there's always a group of people that can be rational and reasonable. And history doesn't talk about the rational, reasonable people. It talks about those that got controlled, generally speaking. And I'm speaking in generalities because
Right.
unless we talk about a specific point, it's really difficult. But so if the authorities are so wise as to tell people not to bathe, they also came and blamed certain things like certain supposed plagues and the Black Death on the depravity and filthiness of the people. So that's talking out of two sides of your face. You don't get any credit in my book for that. So when I saw all this and saw some of where this material was coming from about being told what happened based on my betters, then I decided to dig deeper and find out and be a detective and find out what makes more sense.
What else did you find out when you started digging, when you did your detective work on the history of soap? Where else did it lead?
Well, I looked at a site in Pompeii where two scholars argued over the fact that there was a soap store or a soap making retail shop of some sort. And then
like a laundromat or something?
Well, no, that was, they said that soap was made there. And then another scholar argues, and I cite the sources and go very deep into that point because the other author cited and was observing that it couldn't be a soap making place because they tested the pH and they did all this. And so it had to be just a laundromat or a laundry. And clearly, they had abilities to wash textiles. So they dyed and made textiles. So this is where I start to have to piece together through rational thought and logic, to the best of my ability, what actually was there. Not one of those archaeologists brought an actual soap maker to the site, like an actual soap maker of any degree, a homemade person, somebody who just makes homemade soap, or somebody who does it at an industrial level. Not one took an expert in that area that they were trying to uncover. And that opened a door in my mind to say, that just seems reasonable to me. That seems reasonable that you would get an expert in that very specific area, not just an archaeologist, but in that area. And then go and test it and say, because obviously soap won't last
Right.
thousands of years. So then you have to look at how was soap made, what kind of metal or clay devices would you need to make actual bars of soap or slabs of soap. And then if they were making soap, what kind of soap did they use? Did they make textile soap? And they didn't have the abilities to make detergents quite at that time. So they were using potash and some other inferior materials, but they were also at that time in that region known for bathing. So all of that makes more sense that they were using, let's say, in generally, a cleaning agent to clean something. Like we can attest to that much. But instead, the scientists and archaeologists fight over the pH balance of what they found. And that's what gets documented, not the literal experience of what it was like to be there and the evidence and proving it and pointing it all out to say, well, here you make your determination. We don't know exactly what this is, or bringing an expert in the field in.
So they basically brought in a bunch of chemists to prove that what it was or what it wasn't. And
No,
they said that's the fact.
Not exactly. They didn't bring in chemists. They used their archaeological education to understand the site, but then they tested it. They either tested it themselves or had it tested, the materials that they found. And they determined based on the pH level, but at what stage? Because if I test potash, the pH is going to be weird or different. Then it's going to be different than a finished bar of soap. And what other materials do you use that the pH won't match what their expected results are? So It was unclear, but because it was so unclear, and that people like to make these determinations and say, oh, there was even a soap making business in Pompeii, or then the other side of that is there wasn't a soap making business in Pompeii, and make these claims, and that is the beginning of deciphering what soap myths we live with that fall apart when you start to scrutinize them on closer inspection.
So when you read about this historical stuff about soap, did it change your opinion on how history is written based on what you know on your experience?
Well, it confirmed suspicions I had and about how history is written. I mean, didn't we grow up with saying Columbus discovered America, and we were confirmed and tested?
Columbus sailed the ocean blue, 1492.
Over and over, we got that pounded into our head, and I'm still grieving 12 years of education, not to mention all the additional education I got after that, because it was almost like it was almost meant to kill curiosity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it certainly changed how I view research and reviewing, and I'd prefer somebody offer me the material and say, this is what I discovered, versus, and here you can make your determination and ask questions along the way, versus position themselves as an authority and telling me.
I would like to pivot a little bit, okay? For the next question.
Okay.
So, in chapter 7, you write the wands of wizardry. And you have different cornerstones of where you build your information from, such as you talk about imagination, intention, and then protecting your creation, creating protection layers in your before you make your creation, and then going through the action of doing it. How did you even come up with these? That when I read that chapter, there's so much to break down. I'm like, my question is you're my wife. I'm around you every day. Where did you come up with this? I'm baffled by it.
Wow, that's interesting that you would ask me that of all things. Like, where do I come up with that? I don't know. It seems obvious to me, but I break it down. I don't know. It's not obvious to other people.
Because the reason why I bring that up is you're very clear on each step.
I don't know. Maybe because I observe things at different levels. Like, I observe things from a vertical perspective, what's coming in from the unseen realms, and then I observe things from the horizontal perspective. So I'm not really sure. It just seemed pretty like a logical conclusion to me based on everything. And remember, this isn't like the first time I've had a go at writing soap. I've written 4 books prior to this about soap, dough specifically. So I'd already had a lot of this tracked out. I just didn't explore it as well as I did in this book.
I like the fact that how you can take that wide angle view and then break it off into sections and stuff like that. That's pretty awesome.
Well, I heard something today that said that, talks about people that are highly educated, and they speak in complex terms, and so right away a lot of people call them geniuses because they're so confusing. But confusion in and speaking in an academic way doesn't equal genius, in my opinion. And I was taught also, because I'm a particular bandwidth, like the average person sort of bandwidth. that I understand, because that's what I grew up in. That's the world I understand. I didn't grow up in the 1%. I didn't grow up in the 1% either top or bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So right in the middle of the bandwidth. And I was taught that if you can't summarize what you understand in a simple phrase, then you really don't understand it.
Right. I agree.
So if I apply that to some of the supposedly smartest or most insightful people, they speak gobbledygook. And if they're so smart, how come they can't make it just simple for me? Some plebeian, some middle of the road person like me, why can't they just make it simple? I think it's because it's pointedly confusing. So if somebody doesn't want to deign or lower themselves to make it simple, we both know, we've both studied algebra and geometry and calculus. Every time you get taught something, it's broken down to a simple way to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So that you have an entry point. And if you can't do that, then I don't think you really understand your material.
Right. I would agree with that.
I want to pivot and ask you a couple questions about the soap making world from a man's point of view.
Okay.
So when you first got into soap making, you came from the trading world and you were in corporate world. And when you first came to soap making with me, what was the most surprising thing about that?
When I first saw soap making, it seemed so simple. Like you just put these things together and add lye and mix it up and you got soap. But when you actually look into it, like all the calculations to determine hardness of the soap, whether it's more drying to your skin or moisturizing, all the calculations into the soap creation itself that someone can do. Even to this day, I look at it and I'm like, that's too confusing for me. I don't even want to investigate that. But there's a lot of math and chemistry that's happening behind the scenes that I had no idea about. And I have a serious respect for that, because when I started making soap dough, it was, until I got on board and made it correctly, it was a catastrophe. Because I thought, I could just add this and this and this and in this order. Then it was too hot and it was just a mess. So there's a lot of respect in regards to soap makers to make a really good bar of soap. At the time when I first saw it, I was like, this is easy.
So what did you change in yourself to start making soap dough correctly and soap correctly? Because you're probably the second person who's made as much soap dough in the world as me.
We had a lot of arguments about at the beginning and how I should make soap dough. And I didn't want to follow your template, because I felt like if I'm going to be doing it, I should figure out my way of doing it. And so once I let go of all that resistance and followed your template and then created a workflow inside that template, then I was able to make great soap dough. The thing is my resistance to you and my resistance to the whole process of doing it. I thought I can do it better because, I came from corporate and I'm so smart and this is so easy. And then after I screw up all the soaps and you're just shaking your head at me like, I told you how to do it. And you were really nice about letting me go through that process, by the way. I just want to let you know. Even though I might have wasted hundreds of dollars worth of soap or oils and stuff like that. So at least I got to learn on my own, and you just let me sink or swim. That's very good. Very nice of you, by the way. I never did tell you that, but
I don't know if it was nice. It seemed like the best way forward.
No, but the whole template that you gave me on how to make soap dough, it's pretty flawless, but I had to rearrange it to where it works inside my brain. I had to make checklists, had to weigh things in certain order, had to I literally had to weigh every single thing that could possibly be on a scale, from the buckets to everything, literally. And I had to check everything off. And if I didn't have the right frame of mind, I would mess things up. I had to have a constant focus. And that extended focus while making those large batches of soap dough, it was fatiguing, mentally fatiguing. I didn't think soap making was going to warp my brain power, but I found it difficult compared to going to corporate.
Well, I don't think you've ever told me that, but I can see that because it takes focus the whole time you're doing it. Because if you miss a step or you misweigh a certain area, it'll go sideways. The results will be sideways.
Yep.
And see, I don't see it as fatiguing. I like being in that flow. Like the whole day can go by and I'll be in that flow. And when you were working in corporate and then you go to work all day, I felt like, oh, great, I have 8 hours quiet to do whatever I want. That's the difference between...
It's a different type of energy, though, because doing corporate work and then making the soap. I mean, I would work for like 6 hours to make what we'd make 32 pounds at a time of soap dough, different colors. To make one batch, I don't know, I would work for 6 hours and I was like, wow, I'm done. And then you had to go through the cleanup process, but I was like mentally whooped. You would see me after I'd do all that work and I'd just be like, afterwards, oh, I don't want to do anything. You want to go for a walk? No, I just want to sit here. That was really challenging.
I did that every day by myself, wrapped 80 bars at any given sitting, managed to create new ideas and write books. Like that's what I did for 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, solid.
And all I did is make soap dough and I got tired.
But that's the different types of person. I like that focus. I like being in that space. How many times you saw me get up in the morning, I'm still in my pajamas trying to execute an idea that I had while I was sleeping or that I dreamed about.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question. You basically answered what was the most surprising thing and what you found the most challenging. What parts of making soap did you enjoy the most? Since obviously you haven't made any soap for a while now, and we've pretty much wrapped our soap making up.
You know, when I would make soap dough, and to have the flawless execution of it, and I'd pour it to the mold in the mold, and everything was mixed perfectly, and I had that totally flat top of the bar, and I put the wrap on it and put it on the shelf to cool down and everything like that. I liked the fact when I completed each mold, how the tops were totally flat. I felt really satisfied that I did the job really well, because it only got that way when I soaped at the right temperatures and mixed everything just correctly, not over mixing it, and everything went in the mold perfectly. That was probably the most satisfying, because once it did that, I was like cutting, unmolding it. It was a piece of cake after that.
That was artistry, like perfection. You're very good at that. You're also very good at packaging orders so precisely. Everything was exactly like military exact, except that when we got orders mixed up, of course.
Of course.
That's disastrous.
When I came on board, I didn't realize what soap dough really was. I mean, I knew it was soap, but how no one had ever done soap dough previous to you. And then making all that, and I really didn't have my head in the soap world. And then when I saw that, wow, we're the only ones making soap dough. And no one really, we had to create a market of what was soap dough. I mean, then we started seeing other things in the world. Like, what are people doing? I don't get it. I just don't.
What do you mean, what are they doing?
They're not making soap dough. How would we make soap dough, but they're not doing it, and they don't understand what it is?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I got a lot of grief about that in the beginning, and different claims people put forth about grinding actual made soap into a putty kind of thing, but it was lumpy and it wasn't the same thing at all. It wasn't, and just I made soap dough. I created soap dough, and then I didn't realize that no one else had ever done it. Like, I didn't even researched it, like, as far as history or anything else like that. I hadn't written any books or anything. So I was trying to explain over and over and over in all the groups, and every time I posted something, and people would claim that...
They didn't get it, though, did they?
Well, they would claim that it was sugar, or it was a thing, a plastic or something like that. And I would explain to them no, and then I felt like, wow, that's weird. Nobody really understands what I'm doing. It seems pretty obvious to me. And I would spend a ton of time trying to explain it in groups and in my posts and everything. And so then I wrote the books, but I still didn't even understand that no one else had made soap dough or quantified it or written books about it until years later. And when I started doing more research about it, writing blog posts and explaining what I was up to, and the more I dug on it, the more I realized no one ever done this before. So I had to teach what it was. I had to write books for it. I had to explain almost everything that I'd ever posted and how it was. Then I made videos on that. And then I had to figure out how to package it, how to market it, what all its uses were, stencils and stamping and rolling it out and cookie cutters and fondants and extruders. And then there's this other sort of world that came up. I don't know if it came up in part because of soap dough, but it definitely came up as a result of sort of soap dough. You can't have extruder discs without soap dough. And some of those people that made, all these things, they wanted to sort of take my sunshine away because I had the copyright and I already said, here's what I did. And I'd been doing it for years before that. So I'm not really sure that, still to this day, when I say, I was the first person to bring soap dough to the foreground, and I don't try to say it very often, but I still get some flack for it, even though I've got 6 books.
So, through this whole process, what other things did you figure out?
Well,
that's a very vague question. So
yeah, I thought you meant in relationship to soap.
The question is related to specifically because me being your husband and being around you all the time is what other insights do you have through, because this whole soap thing was a creative endeavor.
Well, okay, first of all, trying to figure out all the different types of uses for soap dough, because that's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. You can scrape it like a plaster onto something, so then you can change the texture of your bar. You can mold it and sculpt it. You can cookie cutter it. You can use a fondant plunger. You can make a variety of different. You can push it through an extruder or a pastry press, or you can do a lot of different things. I put it in every possible tool and way that I could do it.
You could smear it into a crack that you have in the soap.
Right, that's a really good point too. A lot of people that have soaps that overheat, you could just take a scraping of the same color of the cracked loaf and take a scraping of that when it's still wet and smear it in the top, and you'll see it, but it will dry and have no crack in the top. It'll all be soap, and you sort of want it all to be one soap. But because I was looking through, and I started practicing looking through the lens of different concepts of what else could this, or asking questions, or perfecting the curiosity, and that it opened the door to asking questions about, what's true or what is applicable, or, and having a deeper philosophy towards, is that really true? And I think that question right there, is it really true? How do I know? Can I prove it to myself? Leads to all the conversations we've ever had over the last 15 years.
So a lot of the so-called rules of soap making, you broke them in regards to creating the concept of soap dough. Because when you make soap, they say once you get it in a mold, you're not supposed to touch it. If you get lye in your hands, and all these crazy rules. I wouldn't say they're crazy, but these edicts in regards to soap. And soap dough was essentially a mistake. And you said, I'm not going to waste this.
Yeah.
And so you broke the rules and you scraped this putty type soap out of your mold, even though you just made it like it's a couple hours old. You're not supposed to touch it, but you did, and you had it in your hands, and you're squeezing it into a ball, and you're angry that you lost this soap that didn't turn out the way, and then next thing you know, you have a whole new creation in your hands, and it's because you broke the rules.
Yeah, I don't listen to many people. I don't like being told what to do, or I'm not going to follow something that somebody tells me to do just because, when it doesn't apply to practicality or logic.
So I'd like to ask you another question on that. Why not? Why don't you succumb to those rules?
That's a very good question. Mostly because the people that are telling me the thing I found to be wrong, they're just wrong. Like the Columbus theory, they're just wrong. And it's not that I'm trying to prove them wrong. It's just I want to see the world through different ways. So I've had people tell me that I was worthless, a mistake, and I wasn't going to amount to anything. Quote unquote, I was told by my stepfather, who's going to marry you? You can't cook. That's what he told me.
I will.
Right. We cooked together.
Yes.
But so I've just, especially when it comes from a mean or bad place, when somebody tells me something, you just have to do it because, that's not good enough. And I deserve better than that. And it's not because I demand it or because I think they need to give it to me, but I respect myself more than that. So if someone says, oh, you're 100% going to fail at this, or you can't do this thing throughout my life, I found a way over, under, or around it every single time. And the evidence and proof of that is because I'm still here.
It's kind of a interesting. I had this vision as you're saying that, like somebody tells you, don't open that door, there's a monster over there. And you're like, okay, I won't open the door. But down the road, you say, I've never opened that door and somebody told me there's a monster. I got to see this for myself. I don't necessarily believe it because I have a lot more wisdom in the world. Never seen a monster in the real world.
Well, that's good that you've never seen a monster in the real world. I have seen monsters in the real world. Maybe not theatrical monsters, but I've seen them. So there might be a monster on the other side. There might. You have to calculate what the chances are that the monster's going to be there. And then you have to figure out what the intention is of the person telling you not to open the door. And then once you start to understand their intention, you have to ask what their motive is. And, we think intention, it doesn't mean anything. Intention means 100% everything. It's in the law. Intention in the law. So, and nowadays, people, at least the general zeitgeist, is that their intention is not material, but they deserve to have this or that, and you have to give it to them. You can have self-respect and think you deserve certain things without enforcing someone else to give it to you.
I agree. So after creating soap dough and the soap business and finding that creative aspect, would you say that this is a catalyst to your misunderstood magic books that you've written?
Yeah, and I've always wanted to write, and writing the soap dough books got me to realize that I don't have to write in an academic style in order to communicate, and that I have an ability to reach certain types of people with writing is sort of this navigation place that other people can connect to me with in a sincere way. I found how-to books and nonfiction books really boring, so I wrote all my soap books in a way that I found entertaining. Because I did that, I gained more confidence in writing, in the act of formulating thoughts into coherent stories and information and material. And, I've been writing most of my adult life, but just not writing really well. And so, because I started thinking differently, I started thinking differently about a lot of things. And then these letters came about, and it didn't just arise out of nowhere. It sort of bubbled to the surface, essentially.
Is the creative process of crafting the same as writing? The creative process of writing?
Similar, but not the same, I don't think.
It's the same mechanism, basically, or is it totally two different things?
You mean just writing, just being crafty and just like stamping an envelope, or what? I don't understand.
Right. Well, when you make the soap, you have an idea for a soap and you start crafting it and molding it with your hands, compared to a story outline and then start writing it and where to begin. And I'm just trying to figure out for me how you would go about the creative process of, because you've written what, 5 fiction books now?
Yes.
And you did it in a year?
No, 2 years.
2 years?
Over 2 years, yeah.
I mean, that's super prolific.
Maybe. They're not super big books, only about 200 and 300 pages each. So it's like one big book. But I finished, yeah.
Did you find the story just flowed right out of you? Or is it something you had to dig up?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. Anybody that says it just flows, that might be a hit of inspiration. Nothing's ever flowed for me. I have to work at it. And that's an interesting thought, though. Is it the same? Well, you have to gather your tools. So that's the part about, you have to hold on to the spark of inspiration long enough to manifest it, which could take, like for soaps, I'd work on a soap top for a week or so sometimes, and every day, all day, work on that, and hours went into those soaps. Some days, and some others didn't. Some came together really pretty quickly. From beginning to end of execution, there were weeks that would go by. So I had to hold on to that spark of inspiration. And with a book, you have to hold on, you have to cultivate the story, the full story, but it doesn't have to be finished. Like the story doesn't have to be finished before you start writing it. But you have to hone your tools, like I write about in the soap making book. And you have to hone your tools, keep them clean and sharp and properly put away or utilized. In the same way you have to practice writing, practice thinking. That happens all the time. So yeah, it's a lot. I don't know. That's too big of a question for right now. So yeah, so then those books came out too, and then I paused. So I wrote volume 1 and 2 of the Letters of Misunderstood Magic, and then that's under Abigail P. Winters because my sister and I wrote those together. And then I wrote the Grimoire, Spells, Spices, and Stardust, which is a spell book that has real recipes and tea recipes and magical properties and processes and philosophy, and which is my sister's favorite book of what I've written. And then I wrote the Grudgery, and that's a history of what it means to go to an emotional grudgery and where the whole idea lives and exists and who operates it and how they operate it and all that stuff. And the Cryptid Compendium, which isn't finished. And then I paused. I started 2 other books at that point, and then I paused on that, and then I wanted to coalesce all my books that I've ever written, soap books I've ever written, into one final book. So then I could wrap it up and offer my fragrance oil recipes and my colorant recipes and all my soap dough recipes and my philosophy of soap making and all the how-tos and all the particulars, because I'm done. So, I didn't offer my colorant recipes for a lot of years because I didn't want to share that, because that was our livelihood. Now that we've wrapped it up and we're not going to do that anymore, I want to share all that and share some of my insights and secrets to how I did what I did and how I think and see the world and all that kind of stuff.
I think the way you did the order of things really helped in regards to the secret book of soap magic, because it's not written like a non-fiction how-to book. And that's very refreshing in regards to reading about, because in my opinion, soap's kind of it's not exciting. But you wrote about it, and it's an enjoyable read. It's a story. It's a story with history. And it's a how-to book on how to create an environment to make soap.
Yeah.
And it's super enjoyable to read.
Thank you. Well, and I wanted that to have all those components where it's, yes, there's the pragmatic part about how do you do this, and then you could just look at that chapter and go right to there, and this is how you do it. And you can just avoid all my philosophy and everything I think about how to prepare your environment. The other thing I hope that happens with this book is that other crafters read this book that aren't making soap. And maybe I'll write another book about crafting in and of itself, because the environmental aspect is that, and that's far too big of a conversation to have about how to get creative or how to be inspired, how to maintain inspiration, how to stay in that flow, than just for this conversation. But that has everything to do with being, a lot of people in the soap making world are crafters. They do a lot of other crafty things. They do crochet or needlepoint or card making, or they just do a lot of different things. They're herbalists. They make herbal things and teas and elixirs and all that stuff. And so that was the audience I was speaking to when I wrote this book, is, how do we quantify inspiration and the creative flow? And I think there's enough people that do that on a regular basis that they understand what it takes to get to that creative flow and maintain it. And there's so many things in life that can disrupt that. And if you're going to constantly be disrupted in that flow, how do you pick it up again? How do you keep it going? How do you maintain it?
Right.
So that's, the lion's share of that idea is in that book too. Last 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago or whatever, I did a talk, and I was trying to talk about inspiration, but I hadn't cultivated it, and it was such a terrible flop that it kind of gave me the motivation to cultivate the idea and to really go as deeply as I can to understand what it takes to stay in that inspiration and that creative flow when there's a million little life things that'll take you out of it.
Awesome.
I think we've talked enough about this, and I hope that everybody that listens to this enjoyed it and that they go and sign up for Notify Me for the book. We're going to have another small release of these books, but every book, I'm getting everything together now, is going to be wrapped and signed, and every book that went through the pre-order process is going to have a bunch of surprises in there.
Nice.
And I didn't just buy everything. They're going to be my favorite things, and they're some of the things I did buy, but I create a lot of the things that are going into the packaging and the expression of that. And I have some surprises for the people that bought and believed in this book, The Secret Book of Soap Magic. So I want to support that and show them my gratitude. So I can't wait to ship those out. So thanks for asking the questions, hon.
You're welcome.